In 1994, a global consumer goods giant entered several African markets with their most popular food products. The product was good, the pricing was competitive, the distribution was there, but the sales were flat. Consumers picked it, they looked at it, and they put it back down. The problem was the packaging. Now let me explain better. In parts of the world where literacy rates are lower, people read labels visually. So what is shown on the package tells them what is inside the package. So when this company puts a picture of a healthy, smiling Western baby on the label, just like they did everywhere else, the local consumers could not relate to the image. Because of that, they were not sure of what was inside the jar. So that's one assumption. Our packaging works everywhere. Quietly killed their launch. Now imagine making that kind of mistake with a $10 million media buy or a continental distribution deal and 3 years of product development behind it. That is what happens when you enter Africa without research. And today I'm going to show you exactly how to make sure that that never happens to your brand. Welcome to Fieldwork Africa's YouTube channel, where we'll talk about everything related to market research, social research, and the trends in between. If you're watching this video, then you're probably someone who takes the African markets very seriously, or you could be a brand manager at a major company, or probably a founder that is trying to scale across borders, or you could be a global executive that is trying to figure out why your last campaign under-delivered. And even if you're watching this video just for fun, whatever category you fall into, this video is for you. Now, here is the truth that nobody talks about at those big strategy meetings. Africa is one of the most exciting growth markets in the world, with over 1.4 billion people. It has the fastest growing middle class on the planet. It's a mobile-first population that completely skipped the desktop era and went straight into smartphones. The opportunity is real, the potential is enormous. But Africa has a reputation it has earned for humbling the world's biggest brands. Coca-Cola, Walmart, eBay, some of the most powerful companies in the world have entered this continent, spent millions of dollars, and walked away confused. Not because Africa is difficult, but because they treated it like it wasn't different. They carried assumptions from Europe, from America, from Asia, and applied them here without checking. Without asking and without making the proper research, the market showed them exactly who's in charge. Today, I'm going to be breaking down the research frameworks that separate the brands that dominate the African market from the ones that became cautionary tales in business school case studies. So let's get right into it. We'll start from the very foundation: consumer research. Now, I want to address this misconception right away, because a lot of executives hear consumer research and they think focus groups, surveys, asking people if they like the new packaging. That is opinion gathering and not consumer research. Real consumer research is understanding why people behave the way they do, even when they cannot tell you themselves. And here is what I mean. In many African households, the primary purchasing decision maker is not the young professional you target on Instagram ads, and it's not the millennial with the smartphone. Most times it's the mother, the grandmother, the auntie that has been buying from the same place in the market for over 15 years, that one that knows the price of Gary to the last kobo, and the one who has built a purchasing rhythm around their household income circle. It might be daily or monthly. Now, if your product does not fit her world, her cooking routine, her budget management, the way she stretches a single purchase across a whole week, she'll walk past it every single time. And here's what is fascinating. She might not be able to vocally explain why she walked past that product, or even the friction between her and the product, as that might be invisible to her. It will take skilled researchers, people that are trained in observational and ethnographic methods, to surface those unarticulated barriers. The same principle applies to NGOs and development organizations. When UNICEF designs health behavior campaigns across West Africa, asking communities questions like, do you think hand wash is important? That gives you just one set of answers. But now asking what makes it hard to wash your hands regularly, that question will uncover something completely different. You start to learn things like the nearest water point is 20 minutes away, that soap feels like a luxury when you are handling other household priorities. That insight is the difference between a campaign that is trying to change human behavior and the one that just sounds good in a boardroom presentation. The question every brand should be asking is not, do people like us? But the question should be, what is actually stopping them from choosing us? Now let's talk about money, because this is where skipping research stops being a strategic mistake and starts to feel like a financial disaster. Now I'm going to be talking about two categories of pre-launch research that companies consistently underinvest in and consistently regret skipping. The first is product development research. Now let me give you a short story to buttress my point. In 2011, Walmart entered South Africa through a $2.4 billion acquisition of Massmart. On paper, it made complete sense, from scale to distribution network to their price advantage. But Walmart's core value proposition, everyday low prices, and in South Africa retail markets, that proposition ran deeply entrenched local competitors. Pick and Pay, ShopRite, Woolworths. This already owned the value and quality narratives with local consumers. Walmart had not adequately researched the competitive landscape and the local consumer loyalty dynamic before committing billions. The integration was rocky, and even years later, the returns never matched the ambition of the entry. Product research validates the concept against real local conditions, competitive context, price elasticity, distribution realities, before the budget is committed. The second is advertising research. Here is another story. Pepsi learned this lesson in a different market. You see, in China, they had their legendary slogan, which is "Come alive in the Pepsi generation." Now, this was translated in a way that reads, Pepsi will bring your ancestors back from the dead. Now bring that sensitivity to Africa, where you are not choosing one language barrier. There's Yoruba, Igbo, Hausa, Swahili, Amharic, Twi, Zulu, and hundreds of dialects and cultural registers in between. A visual that is aspirational in Lagos can feel alienated in Kigali. A tone that resonates in Johannesburg can land completely flat in Dakar. Advertising research stretch tests your message. The visuals, the tone, the medium, the cultural references across your specific target markets before you spend on media buys. It turns a 50-50 gamble into a calculated investment. The brands that skip this step are not being bold, but they are being reckless with other people's money. Here is something that should change how you think about your African strategy. Lagos alone, one city, not even a country, contains more consumer diversity than most entire nations in Europe. The investment banker in Lekki Phase 1 and the Mushi provision sellers are both Lagos consumers, but they don't use the same mobile network and they don't bank the same way. They do not respond to the same advertising. They do not make purchasing decisions on the same timeline or trust the same channels. If your segmentation treats them as one audience, you are spending money targeting nobody in particular. This is what strategic market segmentation means in an African context. This time, I'm going to use a company that got it right, since we've spent so much time talking about failures. We have Transsion Holdings, the Chinese company that manufactures Itel, Techno, and Infinix. They entered Africa when Samsung and Itel were fighting over the premium segment while ignoring everyone else. Transsion did the research. They spent time to understand what the actual African consumer needed from a smartphone. And what they found was very specific. People needed dual SIM cards because switching networks is the normal reality in markets with inconsistent coverage. They needed cameras that will photograph dark skin tones without washing out their faces. They wanted something that no other manufacturer had prioritized. And they needed batteries that could last because reliable electricity is not a given across the continent. None of these features were revolutionary. They were just responsive. They came from research. By 2024, Transsion controlled over 44% of smartphone shipments across Africa. In Nigeria specifically, their market share was approaching 50%. They did not beat Apple and Samsung with a bigger marketing budget. They beat them with better consumer intelligence. That is a good example of segmentation as a competitive weapon. You've done the research, you've launched, the product is now in the market. So now what? A lot of companies treat consumer research like a one-time event. They do a big study before launch and then they go quiet for a year. That is a mistake. And this is where brand health tracking comes in. Now, your brand health tracking is not an annual checkup. It's continuous monitoring, more like the equivalent of vital signs for your brand equity. Are consumers aware of your brand? Are they trying it for the first time? Are they coming back after the first purchase? And if not, why not? How are you performing against competitors on key performing metrics? All of these questions matters. When a competitor launches a price war, and in African markets, price competition can be sudden and aggressive. You need to see the impact of your brand within weeks and not quarters. When you run a new campaign with local insights baked in, you need data telling you whether that message is actually landing with your target audience or missing the mark. MTN mobile money product is now one of the largest mobile financial services on the continent. It did not become what it is today through just one brilliant launch. It became what it is through years of iteration. That is continuous listening to consumer behavior and tracking adoption barriers in specific markets and adjusting. That kind of brand is built on data and not hope. If you are not tracking your brand health consistently, then you are flying without instruments. You might be fine, but you will not know you are really in trouble until it gets really expensive to fix. Everything I have described so far, the segmentation, the brand tracking, the pre-launch testing, it's only as good as the data it is built on. And here is where a lot of research investments quietly fail, not in the strategy room, but on the ground. You can design a methodologically perfect research framework in London or New York. You can write a brief that would impress any academic institution, but if that person collecting the data in a rural community, let's say northern Nigeria, does not speak Hausa, doesn't understand the local social dynamic, and doesn't know that in that community strangers are answered politely and not honestly, your entire data set is compromised. And compromised data is not just useless, it's dangerous because it gives you a false confidence. Quality fieldwork across Africa requires more than equipment and a questionnaire. It requires interviewers who can understand the dialect and the culture. It requires the knowledge of the local data privacy regulation. It requires vetted network that can operate consistently, whether you are researching fintech adoption in Nairobi or the impact of an agricultural program in Mali. This is what Fieldwork Africa is built for, not just coverage, but quality coverage. We are a pan-African infrastructure that treats every data point as a consequential, because in this business it is. If your research partners cannot tell you how they train their interviewers, how they handle data quality checks, and how they navigate cultural nuance across different regions, then you need to find a better partner, which is us. Look, the African market will reward you generously if you approach it with respect. Respect in this context means doing the work to understand who you're trying to serve. Walmart learned the lesson in the hard way. Pepsi, likewise. Dozens of companies that entered this continent with brilliant products and flawed assumptions have paid for that lesson in hundreds of millions of dollars. You don't have to make the same mistake. The framework exists, the expertise exists depending on the location. Anywhere in Africa. The only question is if you are willing to invest in intelligence before you invest in execution. If you are, and you are ready to commission research that gives you real answers from real African consumers, collected by people who live and work in the communities that you are trying to reach, then make use of the link that will be showing on the screen to connect with Fieldwork Africa. You can visit our website, or you can simply just send a mail to mail@fieldworkafrica.com. We specialize in reliable, rigorous, pan-African fieldwork that turns your strategic questions into data you can actually build on. Here is the last thing I will leave you with. In a market this dynamic, this diverse, this filled with opportunity, data is not a line item in your research budget. Data is the foundation in which everything else stands on. Please don't build on sand. Also, feel free to share your comments, your thoughts about this video in the comment section. If you enjoyed this video, then you will like these videos that are showing on my screen. Thank you so much for watching this video. It's the longest I've done in a while. Thank you for watching it to the very end, and I will see you in the next one.